Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Casino Marketing University. We've got a repeat guest now, Jim Sulima, Director of Player Development at Rocky Gap Casino, Superhost88 on Instagram. He's a wealth of knowledge. This is backed by popular demand because our first interview was very well received. I think it was chock full of just tips that casino marketers can take and use right away. And so we're back. You're going to be dropping more knowledge today, right, Jim?
Absolutely. Thanks, Craig. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So one topic that we touched on in our last interview that I think there's just, it's a deep topic and we want to really focus on today is building a relationship in this digital age. There's so many different communication channels now and ways to communicate with players. And it can be tough for hosts to know should I text, should I email, should I call, should I, send smoke signals? So tell me your philosophy and let's just kick off the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So traditionally speaking, prior to iGaming, someone would walk inside of a casino, they would go to Players Club, they would sign up for a Players card, they would then take that Players Club, put it into the machine, and at that point, they would get some type of host interaction based on their play. Now on the digital side, it's a little bit different, right? They get an offer, they click a link, they go to a sign-up page, they enter their information, and something needs to get triggered before that host get some type of notification, either some type of play threshold or some deposit threshold. So once we get the notification and we're going to, lack of better words, cut into the guest, how do I want to do it? I always start off as my first contact as a phone call. Hey, Craig, this is Jim from Lima from XYZ Sportsbook and iGaming site. Want to call up, introduce myself. That's number one. If they don't answer, I will leave a voicemail. If they still don't have any communication, call it within 30 minutes, an hour, but definitely by the end of the day, I want to follow up with a text message. So my first interactions, phone call, leave the voicemail, then I'm going to follow up with a text message. If I still don't hear from them within 24 hours of that first interaction, I'm going to follow up with an email. And then I'm going to give it some time for the player to get back to me within, call it 72 hours.
Got it. Okay. And so this is an iGaming technique. Now, let's say it's brick and mortar. Talk about, ideally, it sounds like you'd want to get them in person, right? So,
Absolutely.
And then, so let's talk about what you do if, big player, you get notified, pit boss calls you, whatever, there's big player. What do you do then? And then if you don't get them in time, but they show up on a report, what do you do?
In the traditional brick and mortar place, we want to get that face to face because I want to shake that hand. Hello, pleasure to meet you. Make the eye contact, start the relationship off right. If I can't get that FaceTime and it's a day later, it shows up on a report that I see in the morning, I'm going to go through what I just said to you. I'm going to call them, leave the voicemail, follow up with the text message, and then by the end of that working day, follow up with an email. So I'm basically replacing that interaction and just superseding it right to the digital aspect, utilizing the phone with that iGaming and sports betting player.
Okay. And then with the brick and mortar, because my experience as a host, real world host, was on a cruise ship, right? So they weren't going to get away, they'd be there the next day. So I had all the time, but you've got a short window. So how do you decide when to, cut in? And then when you make that introduction, what's kind of your pitch to build a relationship? Are you always offering something? Or are you, I don't know. Yeah. What's kind of your strategy there?
Yeah. So once I cut in, you need to show value. First and foremost, and value could be perceived a couple different ways. Some people just want to put a face to a property. So they know that they're going to see Jim at Rocky Gap, and that's going to be his person. Another way to show value is in your reward system, right? So make sure they understand the benefits of playing on that player's card. People don't realize when you start shopping around and you start taking your wallet and dispersing it to multiple different properties, unless you have the bankroll to financially afford to play at the same level, which most people can. It's just how the day that we're in now. It makes sense to play at one property in the local market and then one property in the destination market. And ideally speaking, you're going to be with a company that could feed into both those. The MGMs of the world, the total rewards of the world, Caesars, they accommodate both those types of players. But it's important that you keep your play consolidated because you're going to get the most bang for your buck when it comes to your offers, events, so on and so forth.
And so that would be something that you would tell a player if, hey, it's the first time here, and then you could sell them on, hey, look, if you consolidate your play here, then here's what you could potentially get? Like that's something you'd like to try to introduce to them as quick as possible?
Yeah, because you want to start building that relationship and building value to that player ASAP. When I talk about relationships, there's a couple different aspects of it, right? But one of the most important things is being trustful. You want to build trust in that relationship, and you want to be transparent as well. So I want to know, hey, I'm here to look out for your best interest. If I were to gamble, which I do, this is how I do it. And the reason why I do it is that I know from both the professional and personal experiences, I'm going to get the best bang for my buck gambling. The player development VIP world, we can't control if you win or lose. I'm sorry, everybody. The host can't control if you win or lose. But we could give you what we think is the best bang for your buck in terms of what value for your dollar that you could gamble and how you can make it the most effective.
Good deal. Okay, so you've made this introduction. You've hey, I'm Jim. I'm your man here. Let me know when you want to come back. And so let's say you do interact. You give them a card. Do you follow up the next day to be like, hey, it was great meeting you, or do you wait a little bit, or how do you figure out the cadence for how often to communicate with the player?
The cadence is determined by the player's habits, number one, and number two is their proximity to the casino. If I'm in Vegas and I know someone just flew in from Pennsylvania, for example, I want to follow up as much as possible because I know that he's just coming out for that brief time and eventually he's going to go back home to Pennsylvania. If I'm in a local market, it doesn't need to be as often because I know they're closer to the property and I can get those trips faster by communicating to them effectively. Where the player is and where you are matters in those situations.
Got it. So I want to make sure I heard that right. So if they're further, you're in a destination market.
Yep.
They're further away. Do you want to communicate with them
as much as possible?
Oh, really? Just so like when they decide to book that next Vegas trip, it's like, oh yeah, well, Jim's my guy.
Jim's your guy. Yeah, absolutely. So, if I cut into somebody on a Monday, and I would look in the system to see how long they're staying till. So I know they're staying till Friday. I'm going to check up with them on a daily basis, right?
Oh, during the trip. Okay.
During the trip. And then when they leave, I'm going to say, hey, listen, when can I book you again for the following month or the following quarter or for the following event? It's very important in that when you do get that FaceTime with that individual to try to get that next trip on the books as fast as possible. Not only is that true player development, but you're helping that player book their experience and you're taking the ease away and the hassle of doing it.
Love it. Okay. So then you built the relationship, you're cultivating them into a regular player. Again, going to these different communication channels, how do you decide, you know what, this guy's due for a phone call versus a text is good enough, or how do you think through those communication channels?
So whether I'm in the traditional brick and mortar or I'm on the iGaming side, I'm going to ask them as one of my qualifying questions. Hey, Craig, Jim, this is who I am. This is what I could do for you. What's the best way to get a hold of you? Do you like text? Do you like email? Do you like phone call? Great. So I want to try to establish that right from the rip. I don't know if any of the properties are using CRMs like Trio, which is great, but that's some type of note that I want to make so that I know my next follow-up is going to be his preference communication channel.
Okay. All right, cool. So you're building this relationship. Players want to talk about all kinds of different things. What are some topics that you're like, I stay away from? Topics you don't want to discuss with players? Yep.
So, in any public spot, I was always taught no politics, no religion, and no hot, touchy subjects. Whether it be something like abortion, for example, that's a great one. Like, I'm never crossing that line that I'm going to open up and talk about it. The more you've been doing the job, the better you get at, but you learn how to fade people, right? So they say something, maybe it's about politics in the recent election that happened a couple months ago, and you just learn how to pivot. The best way to pivot is to say, oh, completely,
yeah, that's wild. I get it, yeah.
And then talk about something that you have coming on inside the casino, a car giveaway, something going on at the restaurant. Change the subject to something back to the casino as fast as possible. And if they keep pushing it, you could always just say, this is an old school trick. Oh, just got a phone call, got to run, just got a text message, my boss is calling me. Stay away from those hot subjects. The reason is that as a host, it's important that you stay vanilla. And everyone's going to say, like, what do you mean vanilla? Vanilla is a flavor that everyone kind of likes, but no one's in love with right? But no one says, I can't stand vanilla. It's not like triple chocolate mocha latte coffee flavor, right?
Yeah.
So it's just kind of this flavor that you kind of like it. You're not in love with it, but you could deal with it, and it's kind of a go-to neutral option.
Got it. And then what about like, what kind of landmines are there that you need to navigate when it comes to players talking to each other?
Yes. So, and here's another thing, in families, households, right? Husband, wife, father, son, right? Sisters, that type of stuff. It's nearly impossible to eliminate casino chat amongst themselves, right? But when they say, hey, so-and-so gets more free play and I play to their same level, which is a common thing, every host here that I always say, completely understand where you're coming from, but unfortunately, I'm not allowed to talk about other players' play. I'm only allowed to talk about your play, and you shut down that conversation. You don't want to get yourself tangled in, why do you comp this buddy and he gets more free play from me, or I didn't get invited to New Year's. I can only talk about our policies dictate. I can only talk about your play to you, and that's it. And that's for your safety as well as our well-being according to our policies.
What about if a player's like, hey, my buddy, hey, you don't have to say whatever, but I play more than him and he got this invite, but why didn't I get the invite? What do you do in those situations?
Yep. What people don't understand is that the $100 that you put in the machine and the $100 that I play in the machine, we will not come out with the same theoretical. It's nearly impossible. It could happen, but theoretically speaking, it's not going to happen. You might get luckier than me. You might hit a jackpot. I might hit a bunch of bonuses. It's very important to say, completely understand where you're coming from. Unfortunately, I see where you're coming from, but unfortunately, we're not allowed to have this conversation. No two players play are exactly the same. I often pivot to policies and procedures. It's for your benefit, that type of stuff to eliminate the further chat. But at the end of the day, circle back to their play and about what you can do for them. So take, hey, this guy, that guy, my mother, my sister, my cousin, and let's talk about you because you're the only one that really matters and you're the only one I can comp right now.
Mm-hmm. And hey, these are company policies. Company policy dictates I can't talk about their play, but it also, hey, what I can comp or what people get invited to is based on that. I'm not playing favorites.
Yep.
It's black and white. It's math, and this is what we got for you.
Absolutely.
And do you ever use that as an opportunity to tell them what the next level of play is and what they could get if they play at a certain level?
So one thing that I've learned to do, and I actually even did this morning, I try to do as much background information about the player and their play before I have the conversation. Do your homework, right? Before I have a conversation with somebody, it takes 15 seconds to see where their status is in terms of their card levels. So I know if you're only 1,000 points away from our highest card, I'm going to bring that up as much as possible. And then I'm going to show you why you should play that extra 1,000 points. Hey, these are the benefits. Every host, every player development executive, every even PD or VP to really understand their rewards program and the benefits. The property I'm at right now, our benefits are phenomenal. Everything from golf to free rooms, free play, events, so on and so forth. But you need to know that information inside out so that you could sell it to your player at that specific time. And that goes back to what I originally said, demonstrating value to these players and consolidating their play to one property.
And what about like level of play? Because obviously a 1,000 ADT player is going to get bigger offers, get invited to more events than a 500 ADT player.
Correct.
And early on in my career, I remember talking to a player about this. He's like, you know what? I wish hosts would be more transparent with me because I've got money. My buddies have money. Like I would spend a little bit more if it meant I got that suite instead of this normal room. So how do you navigate those conversations about really on the casino side, it's up in your ADT, but how do you translate that to a conversation with the player?
So player development. So one thing that I'm grateful for is that our reward system, so every dollar in is one tier point. Okay. So if I put in $1,000, if I coined in $1,000, I would have 1,000 tier points, right? 1-to-1 ratio, very simple. Okay. I know that if I give that player a tier point threshold, hey, if you were to play to 50,000 tier points, I could do this for you. Then that gives them a goal, right? So, and I'll walk it through the other way when we talk from a theoretical standpoint, because that's something that the industry is going in. Tier points coming from theoretical values, right? So we all know basic math here, right? We all know basic theoreticals, 10%. And we're going to talk slots to keep this a little for the sake of time, right? So I know if someone coins in $1,000, that theoretically speaking, their theo would be 100. Okay, so I could give them a tier point value, right? That says, hey, earn 1,000 tier points. That'll really help you, and give them a goal, double, triplet, 5 times exit. Just don't tell them 1x or 2x. Make it juicy. But when you're trying to have a player play up and you're using this tier point theory to do that, to give them a goal, and it's based on theoretical, you're going to have to basically back out the theoretical in your head and still give them a coin in aspect of it. Going back to what I said, you need to know your tier point programs. I have a lot of conversations with gaming executives, so I understand theoreticals probably more than the average casino host does. But it pays off because now I'm able to have conversations where the guests trust me, but more importantly, they're confident in the information I'm giving them. It's correct. But I like giving them that tier point goal to hit to have them play up, because that's something that doesn't cost them money. I'm not saying, hey, you need to lose $5,000. I'm saying, hey, you need to earn 50,000 tier points for me.
Right. And then they could do the math on their own to figure out if it's worth it or not.
Yes.
Okay, that's that's triple what I'm playing now. Do I really need that
Exactly.
the tickets to whatever game? Okay, that makes sense. Any other topics? Because I know you're a busy guy and we're coming up on time, but any other drops of knowledge you want to give us before we wrap up today?
Yeah, absolutely. Just keep it short. We don't need to have these long conversations about your daughter's son's Christmas party. Keep it short, but keep it professional. Take interest. Be cognizant of what they're saying to make mental notes. Utilize, I still use a notepad, but utilize your CRMs, your notepads. Understand your player. You're not going to remember everyone's birthday, but database marketing can get you a birthday list. That's something you could check. Goes back to what I said. Do your homework in advance before you have these conversations with players, and it'll go that much further with you.
All right, one more question. So you brought up a good point, and that's something like with our host team here, You Are Comped. Sometimes we talk about is like, you got a player, they're great, they're super friendly, you like them, but they're long-winded. You got other players to call, you got to break off the conversation. What's your tactics to, without putting the player off or making them feel like, oh man, Jim's a jerk? Like, how do you wrap up a conversation?
Yep. So you go in with the goal. What is your goal? Is it to, deny them of a comp? Is it to try to book them for an event? What is your goal of the conversation? Give them a couple minutes to talk. You can't cut them short and be rude, but you're not going to listen to their life story either. There will be a time in that conversation where they have to take their breath. They're going to pause for something. That time, you need to make a quick move. Be like, okay, I got to go. Take off. Grab your phone. Make it urgent. Pretend like you're seeing somebody. There needs to be some action you take place to break away from that conversation you're having, and then that's when you take advantage of it.
Awesome. Well, Jim, as usual, this has been a great conversation, chock full of knowledge. I think some people are going to be listening to this 3-4 times with their notepad to put it all down. How do people, if they want to get a hold of you to talk about some of these strategies or learn more, where should they go?
Go to LinkedIn. You can find me, Jim Sulima. Search me. You'll see my picture pop up, and just shoot me a quick DM.
Perfect. And Sulima, Sulima.
Correct.
Ghost host. An old nickname for you. But yeah, we've known each other for years, and I know you know how to drive business. So thank you for dropping some knowledge with us, and look forward to doing this again.
Absolutely. Thank you, Craig. Appreciate it.